Hello.
I've signed all the.
Good to see you.
The.
Linda.
Good, okay.
Recognize.
All right, I'll call to order the March 8th meeting of the CTAC. Can we please do a roll call?
Okay, Matthew Rowe,
Here.
Nicholas Watnowski, Tamara Banks, Brett Beers, Joe Brito, John Castellanarian, Justin Chenault, Jacob Clay, Jennifer Combs,
Yes. Here.
Micah Cunningham, Patricia Eckarnation, Rupert Perling,
Here.
Glenn Goldsmith, Larry Gross, Jaron Hayes, Michael Holt, Travis King, David McLaughlin,
Here.
and Paul Bakar. Kim Progue, James Powell, Dustin Savage, Rodney Thomas. Okay, and Tim Welch. Here. Okay. Give me a second. I believe we have quorum.
All right, thank you very much.
Do the count.
That's surprising.
Now we'll go to approval of the agenda for the meeting, and if I could get a motion for that,
This is Rupert. I so move.
all right? And then,
Discussion?
well, hold on, let's get a second, and then we can get the amendment in there. Second,
Okay,
discussion.
I would like to add two items. I guess that'd be items 6 and 6, E, D, Delta and Echo. One of them is an update on the Senate Bill 1137 for Fredericksburg area Transportation Association. It might take 2 minutes for you guys to say, yeah, that, and, you know, the legislation is, or the session is ended. And then the second one is, I saw that that has been approved as policy committee is the 24-27 tip LRTP and with the public aware. So we need to be aware of that. I'd like to have that as the agenda. So I would like.
All right.
To think that.
Make that motion for the
I'll
amendment.
move that, another move, or I'll amend the motion to include those two items to be added.
Okay. Is there a second for that? Second. Okay. All right, so voting on the amendment to be part of the primary motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now that's the primary motion. So now we need a motion. Well, it's already been moved, but now we need a vote to officially
Amendment?
at the agenda. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The agenda is passed as amended. Approval of the February CTAC meeting minutes. Does anyone have a motion to that?
I move to approve the as written.
Okay, motion,
Second.
second, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Public comment. Comments and questions from members of the public are welcome at this time. Staff will also read comments submitted by the public prior to the meeting. Doesn't appear that we have anyone in attendance to make a comment. Do we have anyone online that wants to make a public comment? Do we have any correspondence?
We had a correspondence from Jane Leeds, but she said specifically to read it to the policy committee, and you all have heard her advocacy for light rail previously, but if you're curious about it, you can just go to the policy committee agenda, and it's linked under their correspondence. So it would be here, oh yeah, and then down to here.
Okay, understood. Is there any other correspondence? Okay. All right, we're already on to 6A now. Welcome new member Timothy Welsh. Welcome to CTAC. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Let's see here. I was born and raised here. Went to public school in Spotsylvania County. I graduated in civil engineering from Virginia Tech. And as soon as I got out, I bought a dirt moving company, and I've been building roads for the last 25 years. And yeah, that's about where I'm at still today.
Are you representing Spotsylvania?
So you're,
I am a representative for Spotsylvania, yes.
so you're a Spotsylvania resident then?
Yep.
Me too.
All right, well, thank you very much. Welcome to the group. All right, so 6B, the business route discussion. And I was wondering if you had been able to hear about what we had talked about with business routes at the last meeting.
I received something about signage and some older signs that are not representative of current.
Right, it's kind of like divergent of, one thing is to just fix the signage with the designations as exist now, or is there any room to possibly change designations? I know that that's less of a VDOT thing and more of a CTB thing, but we didn't know because it was brought up if the changing of designations, trying to pare down some of the concurrencies that we have that might be a little bit confusing to drivers, would that possibly affect any federal funding or anything like that? That was one of the questions that we had as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not aware of that issue, but
Okay.
probably not, depending on what you're moving it from and to. Are you talking about the actual, classification of the roadways or the naming?
Not the naming, the classification. Like, so for instance, if you're looking at Business Route 1 as it goes through Fredericksburg, the southern part of that is more of a logical continuation of 208. The northern part of it is sort of a continuation of Route 2. What if you were to get rid of the Business 1 designation and then instead you just have 208 and 2? Just to
That's calculations in terms of distances when you're looking at projects, but no, I don't, as long as you're still going to maintain the same functional classification, I think it would not have an influence.
functional classification in terms of this is an arterial route or a primary route or
Arterial.
yeah, I mean the road itself wouldn't change at all. It would just be the designation. Okay. So yeah, so I guess generally the questions about the signage in the area, just because I guess it comes down to a couple things like who's responsible for what, because I think the city is responsible for some and then VDOT for the rest. And then if you would like to just let us.
Yeah, my boss, who is Stephen Haynes, and he's been with VDOT for,
He's great. Yeah, no, from these meetings, we, all of us have been in these meetings for a while.
yeah, he,
Oh, yeah.
there for
Yep.
35, 37 years, a long, long time. He said, if anyone asks any questions about signage tonight, he did give me a nice long message, which I'm not going to read tonight, but I'd be happy to send it to you if you want to distribute it, about why things were named the way they were and the distinction between business route and regular routes. But Peter Hedrick, who is our traffic engineer, again, he's been there for a long time, very, very wonderful. He said that he's going to begin the process that you emailed Stephen about with the signs. Talk to David, is it David Brown at the city
Okay.
to address these items. So not everything VDOT would be responsible for, but where it might be a city function or a county function, Peter Hedrick is reaching out to the appropriate parties to address your concerns.
That's great.
Okay.
So Peter and Stephen, I can't say enough great things about. They've been there a long time. They know how to get things done. They're very efficient and they will not ignore your concerns. I just don't have that long of a history there.
Did anybody else have anything further to add regarding any of the business route discussion that we had last month?
I just appreciate you bringing it up. It's very interesting and enlightening, and yeah.
Thanks for listening. I wasn't sure if I'd be the only person interested in it, so I was happy to hear that.
No, I think anything that simplifies,
Yeah.
routes is a good thing.
I guess my only question would be, now that we have a little bit more information on that, is what, I think the most that we can do in this situation is to, give our opinion of what could or should be done in this situation. So are we, as a CTAC, more of the, let's just fix it, and then if it's fixed, that's it? Or do we want to say, to run it up the chain and just say, like, yes, we'd like to have a discussion about simplification of designations so that some of the concurrencies can go away, so that something isn't business 1, business 17, and route 2 all at the same time? Because we do have a one stretch of road in town that is 3 designations in one place. So
I was just talking to Stephen about this a couple of weeks ago, because I'm not a lifelong resident of the area, and I was asking why there were three names for a particular road. Now, these don't particularly overlap, but, you know, from Leland Road to US 1, there are three different, three different names, and, so we had that.
Oh, I know what
They
you're,
connected 3 different pieces of road.
Yeah, they weren't, it's like they weren't there before.
oh, I know, the Primer House, Morton, Forbes,
Yeah,
Lay Hill, yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
That's different than what you're.
Right, ours is just the numerical designation or business route
Where
designation.
does technically Route 2 end?
So Route 2,
I always thought it ended at Dixon and
so,
whatever that one is where you stop right
so
there.
that's where the signage ends.
Oh.
So you've got two answers with that. The signage ends kind of up there with, at that stoplight where it diverges
Yeah.
and you go, yeah. Where it actually ends, according to what my research, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I
Route what?
believe it ends at Business 3. So like William
Okay.
Street and Amelia, like
Okay.
right around there, right?
That makes sense. Should
Yeah.
be-
I always assumed it ended up there at Captain D's.
Well, that's the other thing, because if you look at the signage, when you're coming south across the Falmouth Bridge, it says
says
turn
Route
left
2.
and you're on Route 2. But that's wrong.
Does it say 2, Route 2?
No, it says South 2.
South.
South 2.
Bring it up.
How did you establish that that's wrong?
Because the Route 2 ends at William Street. So it's
How
20-ish
How
blocks.
did you determine that Route 2 ends at William Street?
Yeah, go ahead. I think that's what I read in the VDOT route log. I think that's where it ends.
I was gonna say, if you want some more nighttime reading, you can always get into the MUTCD, so the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, because there is an entire section on signs and different types of signs, from wayfinding to street to, you know, all kinds of.
Signage size based on speed.
The fact that we don't know where Route 2 ends is part of the confusion.
Right.
And so I understand what you're saying. When you come across the Falmouth Bridge and it says to 2, if 2 doesn't come all the way to Route 1, you're saying 2.
Yeah. I 2-2. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So if you start at the north end of the Falmouth Bridge going south, it says once you cross this bridge, you can get on a road that will take you to 2. That's correct. When you get to the other end of the bridge, there's a much older sign that says when you turn on this road, you'll be on South 2, which is not correct. Maybe that was the case in the past. I don't know. Maybe it was always wrong. It's been wrong for 50 years because it's a pretty old sign.
We are a historic town.
Yeah.
It's one of the concerns was, you know, because we had the two concerns where it's like, first, the signage is wrong in some places. And the second is, you know, is this a bigger thing where we need to look at designation just because it is confusing? Because we have established three different answers for where does 2.
Those are some old signs at the end of Falmouth Bridge.
Yeah.
Probably as old as the bridge, to be quite honest with you.
Sounds like this whole issue can be corrected by a couple of sign updates.
Yeah, I didn't know like how much, I guess that was a question too, is how much driver confusion is caused by concurrencies? I was curious about that. I don't know if there is an answer.
Has there been a complaint?
I guess I'm the complaint. That's the one that brought it up. If I'm a complainant of one and it doesn't go beyond me, then
Because
I think that's the answer.
I would think that the GPS probably takes care of it.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Well, then it will say like, you know, turn left onto Princess Anne rather than
Right.
Business 1, Business 17, Route 2, whatever. Yeah.
Now, I will say, when I travel out of town and I go to somewhere that says this or business this, I never go business this. Because I'm trying to get to A to B and I don't need to go through C.
You're a bypass guy.
Yes. We put bypass signs on things. And Route 1 business, or what used to be the Route 1 bypass, which is basically Falmouth Bridge to 4 Mile Fork,
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider a bypass anymore.
Well, that is just Route 1, but actually, if you look at the sign when you cross, it says it's Alt 1, which is.
They should get rid of the alt. I agree. That's one of the changes that we could recommend. But the idea of renumbering, that one of the suggestions in the handout, to me, adds to the confusion. And it gets rid of the historical numbering that I find important. When I take a trip, I never take the interstates. I don't use GPS. And when I come to a town, I like to know where the business district is because I like to drive to the business district.
What was the type of building that you were looking for? There was
The
a,
cast iron fronts.
that's it. That's it, yes.
What was it?
I like to, I'm a kind of a fan of cast iron front architecture,
Okay.
you know. So it's kind of fun to drive through a town and see if they have one, and if so, how many. You know, Fredericksburg only has one.
So, is it the preference of CTAC to table the redesignation discussion and have this just be a fix the signage discussion, or what, how do you all feel?
I would move towards just correcting the signage, updating the signage, like getting rid of the alt.
Right.
You know, some of the suggestions that were made in the handout would be just downright incorrect, like 606 was one of the roads you were talking about. And one of the suggestions was to eliminate the signage of 606 between Thornburg and Snell, which would be a shame because you've got 606 on the east side of that, and you've got 606 on the west side of that. So you'd be eliminating a link.
Oh, yeah. My suggestion was to make it one primary route all the way from Route 2 all the way to Stafford High School.
Oh, that wasn't on the handout.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was a different handout. Okay. Anyway. Thoughts? Let me know what you think.
We need to redesignate some of the routes.
Okay.
There being no second, I guess we ought to move on to the next topic.
Well, I mean, there was no motion or anything like, well,
But I made a motion.
okay. Oh, so I apologize. I didn't realize it was a motion. Go
The
ahead.
intent was to make a motion
Okay.
to proceed with recommending signage updates and corrections.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's 3. All those opposed?
I'll say aye.
Okay. Chair abstains. So that's motion passes. Okay, so we'll just limit the discussion to just fixing the signage.
So
Well, we can run through the first half of this to just show, yeah, we can get past the quiz. We don't have to do the quiz again. Okay, all right, go back, there we go. So yeah, so this one here, it's, all of this is wrong. It should be business 1, business 17, and 2.2, and alt 1 would have to go away. And then, and this is not an exhaustive list of issues that we've come across. Can we go to the next slide? Right, so this is also extending past the Falmouth Bridge going south. It says that you'll be on 2 south and 17 south there. That is not correct. You are going on South 1 and you are going towards Route 3. So those 2 are correct.
We just talked about where 2 starts, where does 17 start? I've always assumed 7, this is,
Well, 17
assume that's
starts in Winchester.
I'm sorry,
17 starts in Winchester.
starts where?
Winchester?
Oh, okay.
Very far away.
And it makes a turn right here,
Well,
17
17 business does.
17 business, right?
Right.
So we need to correct this to say South 17 business.
No. 17 business goes on to Princess Anne. This is
Princess Anne here?
Emancipation going, yeah.
So given that, on the previous slide, you said where it said alt 1 was wrong.
It should just be 1, not alt 1.
One of the
Historically, alt 1 is what goes straight across Falmouth Road and straight down, right?
I don't think, it's not designated as alt 1, it's just
Was.
1.
Yeah. No, right, the sign on the right should just say 1, south.
Maybe that was the designation in the past. I'm
I was
just
gonna
sure
say-
designation.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just 1 south, not alt 1.
They called it Alt 1 when they first built it,
Right.
but that's history now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is it should be updated so to reflect the current designation.
And I agree that the sign on the left should say business, and 2.
Yeah,
That all makes sense.
yeah,
Princess Anne Street,
right.
Right, all the way to Lafayette Boulevard and all the way out Lafayette to Route 4.
and that was the original Route 1.
Right.
Let's go to the 2 slides later.
Well, what was the next side? This side here.
Yeah, so,
This is Princess Anne Street.
no, it's Emancipation.
It's where?
Emancipation High, it's Route 1. It's,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Yeah, okay, so then that one,
I can't visualize where that is on Route 1.
it's okay, if you're going across the Falmouth Bridge, you get up to the stoplight at Princess Anne.
Yep.
That's just beyond that.
Oh,
The road behind it isn't the actual road. That's just
Right,
a
that's-
side.
that's what-
Yeah.
Railroad.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. That's dead
You're on
wrong.
Angle because you're on the sidewalk.
Okay.
Well, I'm on an angle because I'm on street view.
Oh, okay, got it. That's what's doing it.
All right, let's go to the next slide. That one, this one is correct, but it's missing this 17.
And 2-2.
Well, it could have 2-2.
We could
Yeah.
have 2-2.
Yeah.
There, yeah.
Let's see, that's Chatham Bridge. It should be East Business 3.
Mhm.
All of the shields are missing in that nexus right there at Caroline, Princess Anne, Amelia, and William.
Is there
Gee.
dummy signs there?
I don't know. That is a good question.
I mean, without impeding pedestrian traffic.
I would think that there would be,
Yeah.
but I don't want to answer what an engineer could answer better.
One of the principles is make it simpler, not more complicated, right?
Well, it's to at least just let you know what the route is, you know? Next slide.
Thank God for GPS, huh?
Tidewater Trail is all over the place. There's all the business signage is generally missing for that, and this one at Lansdowne doesn't even tell you north or south. Next slide.
Good points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, it is north and south. It's got arrow going both ways.
but it doesn't have the north-south though. This one's wrong. It has a business to north. That is not a thing that exists. It's missing the business 17s. You know, next slide.
That's kind of tricky because it is business 17.
It is business 17, but the business is above the 2 up there.
Just need to shift it down.
Yeah.
Let's.
Let's.
I got some tools. I can do that.
This is Kings Highway,
Liability.
north of the Walmart, so this should be business 3. Next slide.
But stay route 3 going
Yeah.
west.
And this is just, this was it, we could probably stop at this point because this was more making the point of concurrency overload. So this was the Bowling Green example.
Yeah, that's a little heavy.
It's a lot.
At 50 miles an hour, you're not reading it.
If you're a Marylander, you're going to 80. So
Yeah.
I don't think that's really usually a problem because usually when you're driving, you're looking
looking
at one particular number.
Exactly.
yeah, and that's
So just glance over there and you focus on the one that you're interested in, forget the rest.
yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway, so I guess that concludes business route discussion. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Local funding and leveraging opportunities discussion.
Is this, John?
Well, we can get to that later.
This
So
was generally from Larry's email, right? This is what, yeah.
So it's just a question about kind of the role and how funds were used to leverage in the Smart Skill application. And I would say that, and this is just, let's go ahead. This is more of a outsider's perspective a little bit, just because I haven't been dealing with a lot of Smart Scale. But from the way I was kind of watching this, and this is kind of just a trend happening on a lot of competitive grant programs, that leveraging funds is kind of the new requirement. It's not a complete absolute mandate at this time, but generally speaking, unless you're going to leverage local funds in some capacity, that going on for these competitive grants is going to get a lot harder. We're seeing this even within our FAMPO grant cycles with like CMAC and STBG, that if you have a lot of projects that are starting to score and cluster together, the first jurisdiction that says, well, I'm going to offer up a little bit more money, it's going to get those few points. And usually leveraging money is usually a pretty big point total, depending on it. And so the question was kind of like, what kind of options and resources would a locality kind of start to consider? And that can be a relatively broad thing. I believe in our last policy, or maybe it's a TAC, there was kind of a honestly almost joke made that we need to almost hire a lawyer to kind of go through everything that says, okay, where can we actually leverage funding? So in some cases, it can be through like general funds from the locality. Sometimes they can, depending on where they are, they can make a small tax district out of it. There's a lot of different options. The bigger question is really what the elected officials from the jurisdiction want to pull and kind of pursue their own leveraged amount. If it's a dedicated sales tax, they want to go through from property taxes, it can be really varied, and it really does depend on whatever the jurisdictional's appetite is. So I believe like Hampton Roads and a couple of the other bigger NPOs that do have an authority attached to them, which is kind of getting kind of where that comment kind of started generating from, do have that capacity to raise revenue. And so therefore the localities don't have to do it, but it's done through another designated authority. Trying to think of how else, I mean, even within the NPOs and the CMAC and STBG, they're using federal dollars to try to then pair that in the smart scale application so that they can say we're bringing in additional leverage funds, and then they're applying local funds to their, you know, CMAC or STBG funding. So it kind of becomes a big mixing bowl of different funds just to try to maximize that dollar and get a project going. So I didn't know how much further that the committee wanted to take. So question.
Along the same lines, but it's a competitive thing in smart scale.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come up with a project, you know, that you're thinking about putting in smart scale, how do you know how the cost of that is going to play when it gets rated? And how do you know how much you need to come up with locally to make it competitive? Do you wait until after the fact that it scores 30 or 40 and then you decide we're going to put more money on it? Or do you guys figure out that this project's going to cost 20 million and it's not going to do well in smart scale unless we go back and rethink how we're going to do it to make it 17 million? That kind of thing here at FAMPO or with your elected representatives or your planners, is there a process that you go through here locally when you go through drawing up projects, choosing projects that you're going to submit to smart scale, but also some way to calibrate or determine which ones maybe are important to you that you need to pay attention to if you want it to score high?
Okay. So yes, there's that kind of development process. One, I would say, on one hand, individual jurisdictions can apply for smart scale funding themselves. They don't have to come through GWRC or FAMPO.
But Spotsylvania,
yeah.
Stafford can.
FAMPO and GWRC have their own kind of number of
maybe.
projects. Excuse me?
BRE also maybe? Or do they come in under?
I'm
Anyhow.
not 100% sure on that one. But so you do have that. Then it kind of comes down almost on the jurisdiction or entity. Generally speaking, most applicants will basically look at whether the methodology for that round of the, say, smart scale process or whatever the grant it is. And good ones will basically reverse engineer, looking at previous results, kind of look and say what changes have been made and say, okay, where's the kind of sweet spot where we can kind of land in a either funding or just really in a scoring methodology approach anyway. Say, okay, we know that this project scores really well in these. It doesn't score well in this factor. Is that going to bump it out of the normal funded selection process? You kind of look at previous history. If you start feeling a little bit iffy, then you kind of say, okay, how much leverage funding do we need to kind of push this through? And that becomes an appetite for the jurisdiction or applicant to consider. In other cases, it might be like, this is a no-brainer. This is going to probably lead the pack in the scoring. How much of a priority is it for this region? Because if it's not a big priority, going back and potentially asking for local funds or additional matches, it might have a hard sell. It might be 100% go if it's a free project, so to speak, or minimal investment, or even if there's a 80-20 cost share happening, but it'll become a hard thing to pull money for. That might make it a little bit different. And then if it's something that's like the community wants it, and you just know absolutely not that it's just going to struggle to score anything, that's when you say, how much are we willing to bring up the checkbook to kind of make it happen? So there's, I won't say it's completely paid to play at that point in time, but there's that emphasis, because I do think a couple of our jurisdictions have put surprisingly large local matches into some projects to try to get it through, because there's that much of a priority, although it might not be as competitive in some of the other metrics for whatever reason, however the grant is kind of structured at that point. I know when I did it in other places, it was literally, we would score, see how things landed internally, kind of, we tried to guess what things is.
Self-score prior to.
And then we went back and said, okay, well, these 3 projects are doing good. Number 4 is the one that if we don't deliver, every single politician, election cycle, they're out. So that's the one that you kind of say, okay, we're going to put money to try to push that one up the list. And it's okay if it bumps our other projects down a bit because that's our local priority. But it ultimately comes down to whatever grant process and the methodology is the result, because changes between rounds, you almost have to kind of rescore. You can't always assume that's going to be the same from round to round. So you can't just always assume that the money that you put forward, you can't just keep doing it the same way if you're not constantly reassessing. Okay. Some jurisdictions have more of a capacity to use the leverage funds. Some have a bit harder time. Some of them don't have enough staffing at the time of the grant to be able to do that.
So one more question. How does this play back to the long-range transportation on the CLRP when you start projects that you're going to push next? Do you also do some sort of smart scoring of them to see if, I know that you might have other funds you can go after, but sort of look at the CLRP to projects that are you're cooking to figure out how they might fare in smart scale?
Yes. So generally speaking, I don't know actually, because I haven't applied through a smart scale application. I've already observed kind of the ending effects.
Okay.
I don't really think you can really get that far through smart scale, or at least you're a handicap without being at least on the basic LR long range plan. If you're in the constraint plan, I don't know if there's a methodology that usually the more plans and kind of further along in the process, typically you do a little bit better on a lot grant application. So if you come in with a completely cold project that's not in the long range plan, like that's going to be a very hard road, if not just an outright disqualifier.
Resolutions to support and plan a lot of.
Yeah. And with some of the, like just getting beyond, say, smart scale and getting into like raise grants and other big federal infrastructure things, build grants, then it's like you better have like your congressional members signing off all the jurisdictions that like it is you better dot everything to get it through.
Authority to put
Oh, yeah.
leveraged funds.
This is the process, Dave.
You mentioned authority with Hampton Roads.
Mhm.
They have their own transportation authority?
Correct. So it's usually, I mean, it's basically its own state designated entity that usually has,
And what is that, a gas tax?
for them, they're actually real estate taxes redistributed within the state,
Oh,
as
really?
well as other taxes that they might contribute. I don't know
Within the locality, not the state.
within the
They're
state.
not getting my tax money in Hampton Roads, are they?
They are.
Authority is?
Mhm.
No, that's good enough. When can we start one?
Well, hey, I guess we can move on to item 6D.
Oh, is that?
It's been a hard sell to the elected officials.
That just went before the legislature, I'm sure you'll mention.
So this is the additional item that Dave had
I
put on the
apologize, I
agenda.
apologize for my.
No, this is
Yeah.
the best segue that we could possibly have on this. So
This is good.
yeah, so let's talk about the Senate bill that did not make it through. So I believe it's I'm trying to remember. So it was Senator McPike, but he had put forward the transportation. He had put forth the bill, and it
Fredericksburg Area Transportation Authority, like as in Northern Virginia and the Hampton Roads, would provide the money we talked about, we could leverage and that sort of thing.
right.
Some in the community, specifically on the policy committee, Matt Kelly was a big proponent of it.
I remember.
Spotsy and Stafford were saying, no, we're taxing our own people. But the fact is you get to control the taxing. So anyway, that was part of it. I know the rule was not, I mean, the bill would allow taxing. I would assume, but I didn't read that much. But the funding that they're talking about was raising the registration rates or something, that the registration fees, how much went back to the community. So they would raise, they're not raising the registration fee, but they were raising, help me if I'm doing, raising how much would actually go back to the community of
Okay.
planning area 16. So, Fredericksburg, Spotsy, Saffy, King George, Carolina. But it was sent to budget. It had a budget impact. So I don't know if it's actually dead or it will be considered still as a change to the budget, and that's where I don't
It
know.
was considered by the full Senate, so it definitely made it out of committee, and then it failed in the full Senate by what I
It did,
believe was
okay.
a 20 to 18 vote.
Okay, so it's,
So really close.
so even, it's not, no longer even a budget
Yeah.
consideration. Okay, thank you. That's what I was.
So it was tabled.
Thank
Good
you.
units.
And see what was getting at, the trick was, at least from kind of the policy development side, was that it was, the Virginia Senator from, Prince William basically proposed it on kind of behalf of at least some element from Stafford, current Stafford folks, as well as sponsoring folks who weren't really aware. Even our office was kind of caught on guard. But it was really looking at, so there's a pot of money that for every, house sales, that little part of the document, well, I forget.
Grantor's tax or something?
Yeah, there's a
Something
small
like
little
that.
tax that's
Yeah.
pulled from
Yeah.
every single real estate transaction. And that used to be going to the general pot, then redistributed back to the locality, kind of in the area that it was generated from. A couple of years ago, that changed. All of a sudden, it was kind of say, well, we're going to move that out to, in one case, at least like the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority. This bill kind of wanted to pull that money back to the area to have it partially redistributed back to the jurisdictions, but as well as creating its own authority within that development. So the bigger issue within the Senate was why it wasn't being generated from this area's representatives, and it wasn't done outside with a lot of understanding from the other elected officials within the region. So
Yeah, the other political consideration, if anyone's wondering why did a senator from Prince William put this forward, after redistricting, that particular senator is running in a district that includes Prince William and a large swath of North Stafford.
Mhm.
So it does.
The Northern Virginia Authority, what all does that encompass? Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William?
yeah, Prince William all the way to, I think as far west as Haymarket area.
Right.
So I mean, it's a pretty sizable chunk.
So it splits Loudoun in half, or no? Or Haymarket's count.
Yeah, I would have to go back and look at the
I
exact.
would assume that it would encompass the entirety of the locality and not.
So everything north of Stafford's in a transportation authority going north.
Is
Yeah,
put
once-
10
Yeah,
on it? That's what my question is I think they're part of PRTC.
I would have to double check and look at the lines.
But I mean, it's a dead issue, so.
Right.
Okay,
This year, yes. And it could certainly get brought up again in a future session.
absolutely.
So, well, educate me on that so I can go park up the right polls here. I mean, is that what you want? Do you want authority?
Well, first of all, especially this iteration of it, because it was just a redistribution of registration
Right.
funds, or I think it's called registration funds, that were already being collected, and we're just a little more was going to come our way because our impact affects Virginia, just like Hampton Roads. It's not just, we're not talking about our community. We're talking about all the traffic and everything that goes through it. So it kind of makes sense to focus some money like you would on, say, I-81 or Hampton Roads or Northern Virginia. And so, but the other iterations that have come up before was, okay, you're now giving us an authority to tax our own citizens for to raise more money would go towards transportation. So there's a lot of pushback on that because it was, but it wasn't forced on you. It was the communities would decide if we are going to use that money additional, or are we going to generate money by additional taxing or not. So anyway, that was kind of the background on it. So this was a little slightly different iteration would not have the tax implication, although it may still have maintained, and I do not know this, still may have maintained the ability for that authority to, with the concurrence of the communities, to say, yeah, we want to raise a special little tax so we can build
Right.
roads or something.
Right, to leverage to get
But I don't know about
money. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of bureaucracy. Localities, if they had the authority to put it on referendum, where, let's say, a penny of the real estate tax rate for transportation, I think that would be the simplest way to do it, and you wouldn't have to create all this bureaucracy. Then the localities will have the authority to how they want to use the money.
Additionally, the authorities would be able to cross boundaries. So it wouldn't just be that Spotsy, Stafford, and Fredericksburg all do a different thing and then kind of have their own, I wouldn't say squabbles, but just like different approaches to doing the same thing. It gives the authority kind of a centralized capacity to do interjurisdictional
Well,
work
they
without an MOU for every single
Well,
action.
they have to
Yeah.
agree to it. That's something that's hard to
Yeah.
do when you have, what, 9 politicians?
Yeah. Rupert?
Yeah, I think an authority would be a bad idea for this region. Might be acceptable for Northern Virginia, but we've got a track record of squandering money for projects that are making the situation worse instead of better in the long run. So until we change our ways and start investing our money wisely, we've got no business having extra money to squander.
I got you. Well, give me some examples of squandering. I'm just educating myself here.
Widening 95, putting in the hot lanes instead of just converting 95 to hot lanes. Not, proposing road widenings on Route 3. But generally, anytime you're widening roads and adding new roads and encouraging more traffic and encouraging more sprawl, encouraging more energy wasting, instead of encouraging people to live close to their jobs and use more public transportation, walking and bicycling.
Okay, all right, good, all right. I need to know where I was here.
Go ahead.
So just on this discussion, part of the motivation for my original question was reading in the paper that Stafford citizens had approved a referendum for certain roads.
Yep.
And Stafford was using that referenda and the money that they had proposed as to use with Smart Scale to leverage that thing. So that's another path that can be used instead of a transportation authority, is for the locality to designate certain roads as priority roads and put it up to a referendum. And if it's
Right.
go forward in Smart Scale.
That was a
But-
bond referendum, correct?
Right.
But I wasn't sure how they figured out how much money they needed versus how much they
Well,
was.
Spotsy did it in '05. It listed 45
Any-
transportation
Right.
things.
Prior to Smart Scale.
Oh, okay,
So Stafford did this apparently specifically with Smart Scale in
all
mind,
right.
or somebody was thinking along those lines, because they did propose that road that was in the referendum in Smart Scale, right?
Well, yeah, because sometimes you get the bond referendums because you just think like, well, this is probably not going to pass Smart Scale, so now we have to go around this route to do it. But this was tailored so that it would.
Problem is
Yeah,
construction costs have doubled in the last 10 years. More than double.
Yeah.
So one of our reps from Stafford ought to be able to address that. I did see a report just recently, subject, we're getting a little off subject, I guess, but that they were, the Stafford was basically saying, here's what we're doing to your bond money, here's some of the projects we have actually put money towards. That was kind of enlightening. I don't remember the details. Yeah.
Did Spotsylvania do bonds, like 2018 or
You might be right.
17?
Not for roads, I don't think. They did one
Oh.
2005 or 6.
'05 was the last one I remember. And it was like 45 different projects, and can't think that they've done many of them at all.
But you fire station.
You did many of them.
The FY 24-27.
They
Oh,
they don't have to build the road. They don't have to fund the road on a referendum. It only gives them approval to do it.
Right,
all right.
They can decide not to do it.
right.
Do we have any further discussion about the Transportation Authority? Okay, let's move on to item 6E then.
Okay, so this one was that I saw that the policy committee, we should all be aware of this, and I was surprised that we hadn't heard about it before, but there's going to be public comment. We are the Citizens Advisory Committee. There's going to be public comment that opens up like March 9th or tomorrow or something, I think, for 30 days. And it will be to comment on the 2024 to 27 TIP and the Transportation Improvement Program, I think, right? And then the Long Range Transportation Plan, there's a public comment period that was approved at the PC. And I would have expected us to have known that or heard that. So that's all, the only reason I brought it up. It's just an announcement.
Policy committee?
The policy committee approved it, yeah.
Should come up here, shouldn't it?
It's in
So-
the staff report.
So anyway, just so, and in fact, so it's an opportunity for us to tell people you can comment on this. That's the important thing. And we can comment on it. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, see, you put another good segue in there because it is in the policy committee report. So let's get the staff reports.
Okay. Actually, it'll be in the Adobe that was,
You want to go ahead to the.
Let's do policy committee first, then TAC. Is that it?
actually, it should be its own, top left tab. I actually put together I had time to put
Oh.
together a PowerPoint, so, no,
Oh.
other one, next one.
No, not that one.
I've had it
Sure you-
pulled, yeah, if not, it's in the email for the conference room.
Oh, okay. Yes, because the only one that was pulled up was this.
Oh, yeah, that's it,
Oh, it is.
No,
yeah.
you know, we've skipped staff reports on the agenda. But if you want,
No, we're on staff reports now.
that's not TAC and policy committee updates, number 8 or 7?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
on 7A.
7,
Yeah. All right,
So he just had the CMAC
I'm got you.
Yeah.
slide up.
That was my fault.
My bad.
can you, click to one? Okay, yeah, I'll just go ahead because the other ones are just the agenda item. So on this, so the policy committee update, policy committee updated the GWRC FAMPO MRU, basically the entity agreement that allows FAMPO and GWRC to work together. In addition, what it did, was approve the project list for air conformity analysis. And really what it's doing here is also directing the TAC committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, to have the power and authority to basically act on the policy committee's behalf for approving this process. In addition, it approved the East-West Mobility Study Phase 2 Road and Bike Ped Report. They did kind of took a half and half agreement with the changes that the CTAC made. They kind of edited it down a little bit, but they basically reiterated like one segment. They edited it down to one sentence item. They approved the Freight Summit report and they elected a new vice chair. Also within their discussed items was transit operations for the FAMPO region. These were 2 presentations delivered by DRPT and OmniRide, and they discussed the Fredericksburg Transportation Authority, the Senate Bill 1137. So as a result, the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, hosted VDOT's air quality folks to do the interagency consultation group for the fiscal year 24-27 air quality conformity analysis. So during this meeting, they basically did 2 things. One, the local staff of the various jurisdictions kind of came together to, one, review the projects that were in the list, make any amendments, like VDOT said, hey, there's another 5 that we needed on there, as well as, what was the other addition? There was one other small addition that needed to be added. I think it was for Spotsylvania. Oh, it was Spotsylvania's Exit 126 Orphan Blue project needed to be added to that. So it's like they looked at the risk and kind of was like, okay, let's review those items and say, is this what we want? In addition, they basically enabled kind of VDOT's air quality folks to open public comment. So this is one of those things where FAMPO's hosting kind of another entity kind of doing business within our meetings. In this case, it will be VDOT. This is part of the Transportation Improvements Program for 24-27, and it's allowing VDOT to open public comment through the TAC to provide recommendations moving forward. Anytime we do a major update, or not necessarily an amendment, but a major update to the TIP or a constrained long-range plan, we trigger an air quality conformity analysis. And so this is kind of, I would say, standard lockstep procedure as we work towards approving our next round of our transportation improvement projects. So
It'll likely, I'm sorry to interrupt, it'll likely open up conformity again when the CTB takes action on the smart scale projects for this area.
Yeah.
Because that would be a major change. So you can probably expect to see it again in July or August.
Okay.
So this is fairly common. I think last time we did air quality conformity analysis was less than a year ago. So it's constantly ongoing. And finally, also within the TAC, they discussed the CMAC and STBG selection process. They recommended an amendment to kind of the allocation criteria, as well as they discussed the scoring and budgeting as well, which I'll provide an update to that.
All right, let's go to it.
Okay, so real quick background on the CMAC and STBG. I'm used to using these acronyms.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
Going back to the TAC and Policy Committee update, there was 3 initial items that I wanted to discuss.
Okay, oh, sure.
Our question, now there's 4th. The first one you brought up was an MOU between GWRC and FAMPO. And you haven't been here that long. Some of us have. MOUs between GWRC and FAMPO have been very contentious, very difficult, very complicated, very drawn out. Was this straightforward? Was this, give me a
It was approved within the consent agenda.
excuse me?
It was approved within the.
Okay, that's good. No, that's good. No, I'm not complaining, but
No, it was,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, when you say GWRC, some of us go, uh-oh. Okay. Right? Am I right?
Yeah, but it sounds like it settled down.
Were there many changes to it? What's?
Apparently not, I was just consented.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's really good news. Okay, now, 3 things that in the past that were discussed at the TC, I think, and maybe the TAC as well, that in the past, this body has been concerned about or interested in. The first of all was safety targets, which we adopt every so many years. What are the safety targets that we want to see in our communities? And similarly, it's the asset conditions, road condition, that sort of thing. We always have discussed that in the past because we're representing citizens. We want to know what's being considered and what's not being considered, and we might have some input on it. That didn't happen this year. Turns out, I think that all they did was adopt the state standards in both of those. Is that correct from your?
yeah.
Okay, so.
They both cited the state standards.
But
for the-
so we have, just so you know, I mean, that's something we've talked about in the past. We want to know that. We discussed it and went through it. And then the performance monitoring tool for congestion management. That looked like a pretty significant briefing, and that would be something that we would interest. What was the bottom line, would you say, from that presentation on the performance monitoring tool update?
Both were approved in the consent agenda.
But the bulk of the briefings had, it showed trends of how of traffic, CMP, obviously. Is it improving? Is it getting worse? Is it at steady state? I mean, it showed, for example, 2020, obviously it was way down, or because there wasn't any traffic. So, I mean, or lesser traffic.
Do you want to go through those documents? Because we can pull them up from the.
Well, I would just kind of ask for a little, just kind of gut feeling, or we're about the same, we're on track. I mean, we've done some improvements over the last couple of years. How are they affecting our?
Don't know. This would be me from the staff level. I would not feel comfortable because I would not know enough to go through kind of previous history to know whether or not to offer kind of like a perception value judgment on if it's improving or not. For me, just looking at more professional, it looked pretty standard, kind of boilerplate. Being in a smaller MPO, you traditionally don't.
Except we're in a very high traffic area with the states and stuff.
You
So
don't have
let me suggest, let's cut the chase here.
Okay.
So let me suggest, take a look at it as our chair, thank you, please, and say, should this be something we should see that briefing in our next meeting? It may or may not be. There might not be much there. It might be the changes. So we got the briefing.
I have no objection to that. I mean, I'm fine with just putting that into the.
And just kind of,
next month anyway.
I mean, here's one thing. Are we facing the chance of having to do emissions control south of the Rappahannock River? Emission tests.
Yeah.
Yeah, have we ascended to that?
So that would play into that decision, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that was, okay. So it has some impact to us, and I was surprised we didn't hear it. So anyway, those.
Also look at average daily traffic and travel times. I've seen
Right.
media articles for transit, but you could always
Yeah, that's a,
roadway.
well, but it might be, the changes have been minor over the last 3 years, other than the pandemic. That's fine, and we don't need really to go into it, but anyway, or you could just I guess, go watch the meeting on recording. So anyway, thank you for that.
Okay, any other comments on TAC or policy committee update? All right, let's do CMAC and STBG.
Okay, so CMAC, congestion mitigation, air quality. Our region is allotted from the feds approximately $2.6 million in funding a year. The Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, which is a very flexible funding allotment, brings in about $2.1 million in funding per year. For this latest round of projects, we basically grouped 2 years together, so we have kind of a slightly larger pot available. And the way that FAMPO splits its allocations up is that each kind of transportation mode gets a different percentage of the funding, and they compete with other like programs. So roadway projects aren't competing with sidewalks or bike ped projects. Everything kind of gets separated out. And so roadways get the largest kind of piece of the pie, about 60 to 65%, or close to about $3 million each year in projects. Transit programs get about $705,000. Active transportation gets a little bit over $500,000. And then there's a small little caveat within that. So Stafford County has a small section up, well, not small, but basically North Stafford is within the transportation management area. And they kind of get additional funding, basically being kind of part of the larger DC area. And so as a result, the active transportation funds in STBG basically goes to Stafford's TMA area or within a 1 mile buffer of that. And that's how the methodology was applied. And finally, you have studies getting about $200,000 a year. Traditionally, so this is a federal requirement, but this is always an 80-20 split. So it's always a 20% match. However, the 20% match within the FAMPO region is covered by the Commonwealth, so it's basically a no cost to an applicant in this. Some projects, as you'll see, can be eligible in both categories. Traditionally, there might be a few edge cases, but basically anything that is STBG eligible can go for congestion mitigation funds generally. But congestion mitigation funds have that extra layer of you have to provide an air quality benefit. So if you don't provide an air quality benefit, you can't go for that.
What would be an air quality benefit?
So you're required in the application process to demonstrate that you're going to reduce nitrous oxides, NOx, and or volatile organic compounds or carbons, VOCs. And so you can address that if you're going to reduce congestion, idling time, you can provide an air quality benefit. And if you don't, if it comes back that says you're providing a negative benefit, which is kind of a weird way of thinking about it, then you're ineligible for those funds. And the feds provide a toolkit as well as a couple of other options that say, run your project through this. It might not match very well, but you can run it through it and it'll kind of spit you out an answer that they generally accept. So it's a fairly low threshold. If you provide almost even a minimal amount of benefit, you're eligible, but if you provide kind of a increase in emissions, then you're generally excluded for that.
Broad stroke for that would be if you're adding a lane,
Yeah.
you're adding more traffic. Whereas if you're adding a turn lane, that might qualify.
But we have a great example of adding a turn lane that didn't. Yeah. So
turn lane is a good thing. An extra lane is.
Can be.
if you have a turn lane that reduces the idling of the whole intersection as a whole, does so.
Yeah. So Diverging Diamond must have done a lot for that, huh? Maybe.
And bike ped projects were really big. A couple of years ago, I put together a list for FAMPO that talked about the different types of projects that would qualify under CMAC. And at the time, it was called RSTP funding, but now it's STBG. And I
still want to say STBGDA because it was direct allocation, another term for
Yeah, we've all lived through many acronyms, as I'm sure you have as well, being on the committee.
Any other questions or comments about on this stuff?
Yeah, jurisdictions are capped in the number of applicants, so they can't just spam 100 things. They actually have a limit. Right. So. All right. So the scoring of this. So FAMPO has basically released all the projects that the jurisdictions have applied for, their full applications, and to the TAC members, as well as the general scoring for all the projects. And so in this case, you can kind of see that based on the methodology that was adopted in last February, so over a year ago that FAMPO approved, this was kind of how the project scored. These make recommendations to the policy committee. Policy committee has a little bit more leeway on what directions they want to take after everything's scored, but we just make a recommendation based on the scoring. So in the roadway category, you had a pretty big difference between Spotsylvania's South Point Jug Handle intersection with Route 1, as well with a partial, small piece of the Exit 126 project that was not in the Smart Scale application. It's kind of a thing. This is actually a good way of a jurisdiction kind of leveraging different pots of funds because they kind of broke it up a couple of different ways. And so those were the two largest ones. The US 1 in Lay Hill Road was a two-way right turn lane. Luckily, it was selected for funding for Smart Scale. It's not guaranteed funding yet, not until the CTB approves it, but it was selected. And we kind of like, okay, unless something goes wrong, we're probably not going to put it back into a major consideration unless the policy committee votes on it, because we can't overfund a project. So, but actually, that would have been eventually disqualified from CMAQ because when it was put through the scoring, and even with their staff did it, it says, what is your emissions reduction? If you get a negative score there, that's a bad thing. So it would just be like, we actually had to run two intersections because there's an intersection with Forbes Road as well as Lay Hill. Lay Hill and Route 1 had a bad increase in emissions. Forbes actually provided most of the benefit, but wasn't able to even it out. So that one, but it was still eligible for SDBG funding. And then you also have like PE, preliminary engineering for additional lanes on 95 going into this, as well as some other projects. The roadway methodology here really likes high volume roads. So, some projects like the Georgetown over Little Page and Kenmore intersection improvements kind of struggled to score in some of these, but you kind of put it in because that methodology is very much volume specific. In the transit category, you have actually a couple of projects by Projects for Go, Transit Amenities. The reason why it scored very well is actually only asking for $78,000. There's a huge cost benefit scoring points, and that's where it kind of ran up the points there. The Stafford Transportation Hub was actually initially in the running, but the Stafford County supervisors ended up not providing a letter of support for it. So unfortunately, we have to have agreement. So that's quietly gets removed from consideration now because that was never.
Is that oversight or deliberate?
Don't know.
I think there was generally a change in thought on downtown Stafford.
Downtown Stafford, they wanted to put a lot of stuff on pause. I don't think it was necessarily like no, but it was like more of a maybe a not right now, or I don't know. But it was something that Projects for Go and a couple other projects were done out of the East-West study recommendations. And so there's been a little bit of, hold on, what does this mean? I think there's a couple other things up in the air. So
yeah, I think reconsidering downtown Stafford. I think they just rezone it to B3 office.
That's at the courthouse there.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
courthouse.
Yeah, we're courthouse and Route 1,
Right.
southwest.
It was a 4-3 vote to approve it, and now 3 new supervisors there.
Then you had some replacement vehicles seeking funding as well as Spotsylvania along with Projects for Go. This is kind of interesting because it's almost the opposite of Stafford's case. They're trying to establish a new commuter bus service on Route 2/17. So that was projects rounding out that. For the active transportation studies, so the top scoring one was it's not Bankside Trail, not train. Wonderful. Extension that goes under the Chatham Bridge. That was selected for potential funding through Smart Scale, so that's being kind of removed. So the next higher scoring project is the Gateway Boulevard Shared Use Path, basically going from north of New Middle School to Route 3 there, and then the US 17 sidewalk section. All these are relatively small. Bridge over VCR, bridge over Route 3, Salem Church Road connector, and a couple other small transportation projects there. And then in the studies projects, and actually this is an example of where leverage funding kind of made all the difference, is Spotsylvania came and applied local matching funds to do studies for the Harrison interchange as well as widening Harrison Road. These are studies, not like construction projects.
That
just
was
be
in a
aware of
bond
that.
referendum in '05.
Yep.
Yep.
Sorry, what's the acronym STED for the over there by the ballpark?
What's that? Special Tourism Enhancement District?
Okay.
But yeah, it's Hospital Lane or Hospitality Lane to the ballpark from Fall Hill Avenue.
Gotcha.
So the US 17 sidewalk, where does that start and end?
Oh, it's in between Route 1 and 95. There's a segment, I want to say about 1,000 feet south of the 95 intersection between two roads
Okay.
that is currently lacking.
Okay, so it's not gonna go to.
Not the whole way. It's about a 1,200-foot section. Normally, I mean, you can kind of see with the active transportation is only receiving either about 20% of funding. You only have a small pot, so traditionally you don't get these smaller projects for these.
Okay, it's just such a big demand of people, walking up and down the road and that section, so.
And then finally within this, with the studies, FAMPO is an eligible recipient and applicant for STBG study funds. Unlike other applicants, we can actually come to the policy committee at any time. We're just making it aware that we are coming before the policy committee for a river crossing study request during this. So we do not score our own projects as an applicant because unfortunately FAMPO is the only designated judge or reviewer for these projects. So no score is provided for that at this time.
So they're gonna study it again? Is that what you're?
So right now there's the request from Stafford County and the city of Fredericksburg for FAMPO to explore the potential of a river crossing Western 95 to basically the city-county line, not including Spotsylvania. So they request that. This is going to be potentially the next stage of that to do a more in-depth study and or potentially some level of engineering getting us towards doing the environmental.
It just seems to me there are studies done before, and we keep reinventing the wheel. Can't we use information from those other studies?
None of the current studies have the local lanes on 95. None of them are like posted. Well, it's just always one of those, you kind of do a study and then no actions, you have to go back and revisit. So, yeah. Thanks, like even the easements changed a little.
The history behind that was a request to actually approve options for crossing the river. It actually grown out of this body. And it got a lot of resistance in Stafford, and what they compromised on was, let's do a study of options for us and present that to us.
And so for the request currently in to do a analysis of study, basically what FAMPO is really doing is almost scouting the options initially, kind of trying to just allow the elected officials more information. And so this is kind of the next steps. They'll get that information within 12 months, and then therefore they can decide whether or not they want to say, okay, go ahead. And basically the STBG allocations is the localities meant to come in with basically a local master option.
It seems to me that most things don't change. Subdivisions are there, you know where they're at. You know where the RPA is, you know where the streams are, you know where the battlefields are, you know where the farm supplies are. So it just doesn't make any sense not to use information that's in the other study.
No, it's still surveying the previous study. Not completely like we're ignoring everything else. It's just like, okay, well, now what's happening today?
Yeah, my boss can give you a rundown on everything from the outer connector from 30 years ago to these current.
It's on the committees then, so.
So you know.
30 years ago.
That one crossing where it paralleled the river for about 3/4 of a mile before it crossed.
That one in Foxy, right?
I think we digress a little bit here.
Yeah, do we have any other further questions? Oh, okay.
I do, too, and you might have said this, so what we just went through the last two slides, first of all, I'll say, it's great to have that little 1 or 2 sentence summary of US 17 sidewalk means, and it helps us, people are listening in on us, people are looking at the presentation that's recorded in the future, and those of us, even though we're on this committee, who are not professionals in this thing, so thank you very much for that. It was really well done and very, very, very helpful. So, now, so are these like all the projects, or are these the ones that are most likely to succeed?
These are all the projects.
Okay,
So you're kind of seeing that probably the top couple of, depending on
right.
what happens. Are
Okay,
probably
no,
gonna-
I didn't want to clear. So the PC will then say, here's what's really the priority. Is that what you suggested?
Yes, so
Thank you.
currently the next stage is that, actually it's me, we develop a draft allocation. So right now the scoring is, okay, that's wonderful. Now, once you start applying the funds, that's when everybody gets interested. So we'll provide allocations because we have to go back and backfill any existing projects for cost increases.
So we would expect to see that in the future then?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And then the policy says, we like your work, or no, we want to put thumbs on the scale.
Right.
Appropriate.
That's what we elect them for. Yeah.
Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you. Good.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, y'all have probably seen this one a few times. I think we did it very quickly yesterday, but because the policy committee approved it, just letting you know that we now have an official freight study on the books. And this is something that actually I came in to help do a little bit of, was that, we have very significant congestion. Of course, that means we have a very significant freight congestion. When you start comparing how our congestion looks to other places within Virginia, we are the worst. Definitely worse by looking at the percentage of our network. Basically, we have more freight congestion than Hampton Roads and Richmond combined as a percentage of our network. So we are very much dependent on a couple of roads. They're also our main freight corridors, and therefore we tend to struggle with those. We've been working with OEP, to kind of change how some of the freight funding kind of works, because it's very much, or has been traditionally, looking at tonnage. And so for us, having a lot of trucks on the road that don't weigh a lot, 81 does a lot of tonnage. We do more trucks. We have lighter, more time sensitive, higher value. We're not hauling gravel. So we kind of have a funding discrepancy because they're going to look at tonnage. We don't do a lot of tonnage, so we're kind of at a loss. And so this is what we've kind of tried to propose and try to get some results on, was changing how that metric is so we can be more competitive for kind of more freight metrics for how funding is distributed. I think we're actually making some pretty good progress on that front. Some of our consultants did additional work and said, hey, 5% of our 5% of Virginia's truck-involved fatalities are happening in our region. Well, we're only about 3.7% of the population, so that's kind of there's something going on there. Despite maybe some other kind of more recent things, when we've been talking about a lot of warehouses and distribution centers coming into this area, traditionally we are actually lagging behind a lot of other regions. So it's not like we are the #1 warehousing area. We're actually behind Roanoke, Petersburg, which is kind of just a hangover from Richmond, as well as Winchester. So as our distribution network or facilities grow and kind of come in and take up a lot of newspaper headlines, keep in mind we're kind of playing catch up to a couple of other regions as far as looking at our population and our number of warehouses and distribution spaces, but our congestion is so much worse as well. So it's kind of a weird thing that we have a high amount of
Maybe the congestion will keep away the distribution,
maybe.
but I don't really see it
Yeah.
happening.
Actually, the congestion is going to make the distribution want to get closer, because if it's going to have to spend 6 hours, you might as well 6 hours closer. But
Might as well fill the truck up.
yeah,
Stafford has certainly approved a lot of.
yeah.
I got it.
I think about 4 million.
He freed up on my
square feet.
challenge
I
and
see
see
a couple of
what
spots that you like.
he knows what it's called, or
Again?
But when you look at us, we're like ranked, like we're #4 in population. We're like 7th or 8th in distribution warehouse space. Like it's like we are significantly behind.
The Stafford have the airport, runway, they just.
I've had industrial land
road track.
20
And this thing is flying over top,
20 years.
so flying over top.
And I've sold it all in the last 6 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Further questions on this?
Sponsor.
Okay, moving on.
And that's it for staff reports.
All right, thank you. So now we're moving on to 8A, the VDOT reporter problem and progress update. Has anyone reported a problem recently?
Signage.
Yeah, well, I suppose so.
It's doing good.
Define problems. I could find problems everywhere. Or I could find problems everywhere.
So,
Problems are construction related.
right. So VDOT has a good reporter problem interface. So often, members of CTAC will put something in there and then let us know what they put in there. So then,
That's where that came from.
yeah.
Because of that process, and some of the members have reported, and they would report back, I reported this, it was addressed by VDOT, or that sort of thing. So that's the point of
I
that.
always loved that part of the supervisors meetings when the poor VDOT guy had to sit up there and answer all this questions.
Probably a residency engineer.
Yeah, or Charlie Kilpatrick doing that quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
All right, members' reports, topics of interest, partner informational. Does anybody have anything to report? Dave.
So go, Joe.
Dave had the pen up.
I've had a bunch. I studied this pretty hard today, so I got, yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Go, Joe.
But I want to find out, surveys were done for the east-west study, and why weren't we presented the survey results?
I thought we were, but I could be mistaken.
It seems to me,
Yeah. You've got all that stuff.
especially before we even voted on the study, should have seen what they published.
There's too much traffic.
Can we just,
Yeah.
I think it had been shared, but in the follow-up email for members, can we just link that again
Yeah,
if possible?
Police the grandmaster of all things surveying in FAMPO areas. We have the,
Did you say it was in the email?
well,
I was-
I think we had a very brief survey thing from when we made the presentation 2 or 3.
It was a
things
while back.
ago.
Yeah.
It was a while back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can we,
As much as 6 months, but I could be.
can we have a presentation on that at the next meeting?
Oh,
Well,
then I was just gonna pull up.
We can do it.
Well, why don't we just pull it up?
Yeah.
We might have it here.
Yeah, so.
I think
I thought we had reports on that.
East-West Mobility Study page on our website. You can go down to the roadway report. And then on the very where is it? Should be in the table of contents, but anyways, I can just find it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna.
Very good. That look familiar?
Yeah, so this is the whole report. So
Wait, you did have.
then here is on page 68. The rest of this is the public involvement report. So this just highlights what the East-West study was asking for public comment. It was a 60-day period. And the 6-question survey is in here, and where we did outreach in person, as well as where we submitted flyers and who we emailed and contacted. So 1,285 people participated in the survey. Again, it was for a total of 60 days. And then this is the the resolution opening the public comment. And the press release that we sent to multiple newspapers and had up on our website. It's still on the website, so and and then a link to the report, as well as where to take the survey. And people could just take the survey or send written comments to the FAMPO email address. So this was the survey that we provided. I'm sure many of you took it. I know for a fact that you did. So thank you for doing that, and also thank you for sharing the survey. This is amazing. To have over 1,000 people take the survey is great. So this was the question. If you didn't take the survey, which street roadway corridors did you want to be widened? Anyways, you could read through each of the survey questions, but then, so here are the results. This was the amount of times each of these roadways was selected. So Warrenton Road, Plank Road, and none of the above were the most selected.
Wow.
As well as Garrison Road coming in fourth for.
The above. Huh.
People just really want to vote for 95, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they missed the east-west.
It's not a east-west.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well,
A graph of that, and then I mean I could go through each question if you wanted to, Joe, or you could look at this in your.
Yeah, so 78% of people wanted a river crossing.
Yes.
Okay.
Then where a new I-95 interchange could be, Harrison Road, Gordon Shelton, both, or neither. So then pedestrian and bike, 71%, 69%. That's for two different pedestrian and bike.
okay, well, it's all,
How about the comments?
Oh yeah, I mean, if there's over 90 pages of comments, so you can read those in your own time if you like.
Can you send us the link?
Sure, I mean, it's on the website, so if you.
I'll send it out.
all right. Anybody else with a, oh, well, Dave, go
I
ahead.
did. So I noticed that, and it's applied to not just Fredericksburg, but I think it was Stafford or Spotsy, but I'm looking at the web page for CTAC, because I'm going through the agenda and the meetings and all that stuff. And it says that Fredericksburg has no openings on the committee, CTAC committee. But the list only 6 names that are on representing Fredericksburg. So if there's only 6 names and we have 7 authorizations, we're not full. Something's wrong. Either there's a name missing or and I think they also said Stafford or one of the others was full. Oh, you're looking at it right here, right?
Yeah.
And okay, and they only have 6 people. So Stafford's got 6 there, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Fredericksburg 6. So we're authorized 7. No, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So we're not full. So I don't know why. So somebody look at it and say, oh, I'm not going to apply for Fredericksburg or see.
Forgive my ignorance, but it's definitely supposed to be 7 for each lookout.
Bylaws. You go to the bylaws and it says.
That's,
Now, in my opinion, we got too many at-large guys like Larry, but that's just my personal opinion.
I serve a jar of flavors.
No, I'm kidding about that. Don't take me seriously. But the other thing, there's something wrong there with the numbers and anyway. So.
Right. I do know that this probably section of the webpage doesn't get updated very often. We tend to look at, the date and then
Okay.
this.
But now you're aware of it. So anyway.
okay.
End of comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
I have 2 things.
Sure.
First of all, I'm disappointed that VDOT is apparently not able to find a way to do a ped bike crossing on Falmouth Bridge. And
Oh, right, because of because we had talked about that. It was the design of the Falmouth Bridge was
yeah,
different than that of the Chatham Bridge, where we couldn't do the shift over and then you have the,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a once they fix that bridge, it's gonna be a long time before we get the opportunity to do any kind of a head.
There was that other plan to have a parallel mixed-use path bridge that would basically connect the two trail systems, but that was a
Apparently, this is done,
different
it can't be
facility.
fixed. It's apparently, it's gonna be this way.
I mean, you could throw enough money at it.
We-
You could put another
We
pier.
could entertain a resolution that CTAC's position is.
I thought that there was enough room for a 6 foot wide path
They say there's
on one side.
So the problem was, think of the Chatham Bridge, how it was done, where it used to be the 2 sidewalks and the 4 travel lanes, just like how the Falmouth Bridge is now.
Yeah.
And then they did the shift where they put the lanes over to one side and then did the mixed use path because it was still the same width. You couldn't do that with the Falmouth Bridge because the travel lanes are on the main supports, and then there's this overhang that the sidewalks are on, and you can't do the shift because then you'll have cars traveling on the overhang and it wouldn't be able to support it.
Yeah.
But they're still gonna have a sidewalk, so.
They could still, they could fix it the way it is now, basically.
And what's the width of that?
Yeah, that sidewalk, yeah.
I wouldn't call it a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Like, you use spotters when somebody's crossing with a kid.
Right.
Like a running stroller or whatnot.
Yeah, I don't even know if there would be enough space to put some sort of divider between the sidewalk and the travel lanes, if that would make the sidewalk narrow. I don't know.
Bicycle, FAMPO, I'm sorry, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, I see that you didn't have an update here, but they also discussed.
Yeah, I know, I read that and saw it, so it's not getting any traction.
Rupert.
I'm thinking of that bridge in Richmond that has the pedestrian
Yeah, over the.
underneath.
And so I was going to bring that up actually, but then I realized by looking at some photos of underneath the Falmouth Bridge that unlike the Robert E. Lee Bridge down in Richmond, where it's got 2 supports and then a large area in the middle, the Falmouth Bridge is completely solid. So you'd have to punch a hole through. Which
Too low.
A lot of drilling.
But the thing is, the piers were flooded in the 1942 flood. So
Yeah.
when they were building the bridge, it was flooded, so they added another 5 foot to the pier to bring the bridge up over the flood area.
Huh. So I think my assumption is because of that solid concrete there, that was why the idea for a parallel mixed use path bridge was put out there.
Someone at the BPAC also mentioned a security issue. I didn't understand it completely.
Oh, wow.
Something about explosives could be put
Yeah,
underneath, but that does not come from VDOT, that comes from.
Yeah, but
you could do that under any
you
underpass.
can do that anywhere. I mean, again, to your point, you could do that on the Lee Bridge,
So the other thing I want to ask about is, anybody else notice there's a bunch of accidents down on 119 at Thornburg on I-95? Is anybody looking into why that? There's something funny going on down there. There's less traffic there than there is. I mean, we have our share of trouble up here, but it seems like almost every other day or week, there's something going on down on 119.
Huh.
Yeah, a friend of mine just told me that her friend's daughter was killed there, I think yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah.
She's actually taking the mom to the funeral home tomorrow, but, you're right, though, I've been
Something-
hearing that as well.
Something strange and funny going on. I don't know what it may be.
like
Southbound, northbound.
It happens on both sides.
When you-
One of them, I think, I don't know if it's yesterday or earlier, it's right at the northbound ramp, I think.
so you think it might have something to do with the reconfiguration that they have? Because, I mean,
Configuration.
it is, I mean, it's different, but, it's still in essence a diamond interchange. It's still,
Yeah. It's, and the accidents
Oh.
are not happening on the ramps. They're happening, most of them are on the highway itself.
weird.
Just a weird thing.
I'm not sure which intersection we're talking about.
It's exit 118,
It's Thornburg,
Hornburg exit,
Thornburg, the,
racetrack.
Thornburg, okay.
yeah, that's it. That's interesting.
Yeah, can we get a little bit of a, monthly accident report or,
Yeah.
you know, something to just find out, like, is there a trend on there?
Well, they have construction going on there. So.
The safety data will probably lag just because it takes a little while, so it won't.
Okay.
Right? I'm trying to think of how frequently that's updated. I can look into it.
Well, yeah, let's just see what is most up to date and maybe take a look at the next meeting. Go ahead.
Was going to mention, I don't think I have before, maybe you all haven't heard of this organization that got started up last year, I believe it was, in Fredericksburg, called 15-Minute Fredericksburg.
Mhm.
You all heard about it?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
I have.
Well, their goal is, they're working towards having all of your activities, you know, school, work, play, accessible in 15 minutes without need of a car, you know, either by walking, bus, bicycle. And apparently, I didn't know this when they formed last year, but it's a kind of an international thing. So cities in Europe are in various processes of trying to accomplish this.
Yeah, I think they're a chapter of a larger organization.
I didn't know.
I think I could be wrong.
I just thought I'd mention it to you since it's transportation related.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
Coley's on the ball over there.
Yeah, try.
Say.
Yeah, so the website is fred15.org, but we'll just, if y'all want, we could link it in the email that we'll send with the
Yeah, let's link it.
involvement report and this.
Anything else?
Go ahead.
VDOT is currently working on submitting, I think, 3 projects for the next round of pipeline projects. And we will certainly be working closely with John and Ian and whatnot to let you know what's been accepted, what hasn't. I think next week there's a kickoff meeting. I assume NPOs have been invited and should hopefully have an answer as to which projects we're looking at for further studies. So be on the lookout.
I just want to say my first meeting's been very enlightening. And I need to go learn all your CTAC.
Yeah, it's a lot of acronyms.
Don't worry, it'll take 2.5 years, and then eventually you'll realize that you don't know them all and stop and just ask.
When you said, so don't build a lane, that's bad. I meant in terms of qualifying for CMAQ funding. That's what your business actually.
Well, I need to know which way the little arrows are in my head.
Yes.
about certain things, yeah.
I'm not trying to dismiss the entire industry.
That's the reason why.
No, listen, I've been a road over 25 years and, listen, I agree with Rupert on the 15-minute thing too.
Right.
I've made my living building roads, but every farm I've bought, I put a conservation easement on.
Yeah.
So it's,
ATSA is
That's
a local organization too that works with road builders, because I used to work there. So
what's
it's
the name of that?
ATSSA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
American
Association of
Transportation.
Transportation, yeah. But they're also in Fredericksburg. You can always stop by their
Right.
office and get involved locally.
I've seen, I've seen a lot.
American Traffic Safety
Um,
First.
I tell you the one thing that really gets me as an engineer and a road builder is the quality of the asphalt putting down has become inferior to what it was 25 years ago. And I whined about this for at least 10 years. I can take you to a spot that was paved in 1989 that's still there.
Okay.
Okay, with the old river rock, sand and gravel that God put down the river bottoms, Lord knows when, okay? And I realize that's a limited resource. But in 2004, we went to Super Pave, which took the river rock out, put crushed rock in. Crushed rock today is this big, last Tuesday it was the size of this table. And I can run a roller over that crushed rock 3 or 4 times and I can crush it into 5 pieces. So that was an ingredient in the asphalt. Then we went to the recycled asphalt product, which was because liquid was getting more and more expensive we decided we're gonna take the good asphalt we laid in 1989 off the road, take it to the asphalt plant, heat it up, try to get some of that liquid back, pour some new liquid in, which is not the same liquid of 25 years ago, and put that material back on the road. And we've spent a lot of money, and we have, in my opinion, less of a road today than we had before we spent the money. And I mentioned this to VDOT when the residency side was whining to the contractors about how the subdivision roads were falling apart. And they brought all of us in, and, you know, and all the contractors, and you gotta understand contractors, whining and moaning about it. And I said, whoa, guys. I said, number one, this guy is he's not requesting anything that has not been a book since 1965. There's nothing new in here. He's just got to do it the way the book says to do it. However, and I went and I explained what I just explained. And the maintenance guys that were sitting around the table, they said, I said, number one, the materials that we're working with are inferior to what they were. And the maintenance guy, I said, the quarry, the local quarry, the closest quarry to where all these roads are being built, the stone ain't no good. And they're all, they're shaking their heads. I said, I lose jobs because I go get my stone from Culpeper
Okay.
and haul it down here because the specific gravity is heavier. But guess what? At the end of the day, people ain't calling me to come fix their roads back up 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road. But my point was proven when I learned the other day that the 66 project, which went from Beltway to Haymarket, which was a joint venture with,
Transurban?
no, it's
Well,
the French,
Well,
F.
because they were putting the tollway in.
Starts with an F. Them and Alan Myers.
Okay.
Okay, Alan Myers is the big site contractor from Philadelphia. And they, because they're maintaining the road, they went back to the virgin mix. They did not use wrap.
That speaks volumes.
I think it speaks huge volumes. That is one of my pet peeves in my industry.
Have
But-
you met Kyle Bates, our residency administrator?
No.
No.
What's his name?
Kyle?
Kyle Bates? No.
Let's
I mean, you're probably more into the maintenance end.
let's just
Yeah.
wrap this up. We're
Yeah.
we're on two things. We can definitely take this
Yeah.
offline. Let me just wrap this up real quick. Final public comment. No one else is here right now. Is there anybody online that also wants to do a public comment? I suppose no further correspondence. Okay. Any future agenda items? I think we talked about a couple of those already, but anything else? Okay.
To move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next month.